This is a special report from WDHN News.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us on WDHN TV 18. We're going to join a live press conference in Ozark this morning as Police Chief Marlos Walker will address the media about the huge break over the weekend in the 20-year-old cold murder case of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett. Now, this is a case we've waited decades for a break-in, and it finally came through DNA evidence. And today, a man who was never a suspect in this case, ever, is behind bars facing 5 counts of capital murder and a first-degree rape charge. Let's take a look in Ozark Live right now. We've got reporters on the scene. We'll have full team coverage that we've continued through the weekend and into our broadcast tonight. Let's see if we're ready to go in Ozark this morning. That's former Dothan Police Chief John White there at the podium right now, who was so closely associated with this case as not only the police chief in the city of Dothan, but John had a personal relationship with Tracy Hallett. She lived nearby him. He told me last night that Tracy and his son would ride to high school together at Northview High School in Dothan. John also knew her father, Tracy Hallett's father, who was a police officer for the Dothan Department as well. Tracy's father drowned when she was about 4 years old. That's Ozark Police Chief Marlos Walker at the podium. Just behind him to the left with the pocket square and the pinstripes, that's former Chief Tony Spivey, who ran the Ozark Police Department up until just really probably about 3-4 years ago when he retired. Tony was the chief the day the girls were murdered in Ozark. Again, answers we've waited 20 years for are coming right now live in Ozark. Let's take a listen.
Just as soon as this press conference concludes.
Okay, thank everyone for coming today. We're going to have a press conference there in reference to our 1999 cold case of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett. I have a script that I want to read from, and then I want to have some other speakers come up. First, on August 1st of 1999, 2 Dothan teens were found murdered here in Ozark on Herring Avenue. For more than 19 years, the persons responsible for the crime has been a mystery to us all. The arrest of California's Golden State killer, 72-year-old Joseph D'Angelo, brought national attention to the new technologies in DNA advancement. Last fall, I sought the services of Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA technology company in Virginia, to assist us in the investigation. Law enforcement agencies across the country use the company as the snapshot DNA analysis service to advance investigations when traditional DNA methods fail to produce any results. We employed nearly all of their DNA tests. Phenotyping gave us a description of an unknown suspect. Genetic genealogy helped us to identify the family from which he descended. And kinship testing ultimately narrowed the suspect list down to a single individual. We collected a DNA sample from the suspect, and our state crime lab confirmed that it matched the DNA from the crime scene. The genetic genotyping yielded a match to the DNA sample, again taken from the crime scene in 1999. Now, on March 15th, 2019, investigators located and arrested 45-year-old black male Coley McCraney of Dothan. McCraney grew up here in Ozark, and he attended all of his schools here in Ozark. First and foremost, I would really like to thank the entire Parabon team, particularly the genetic genealogy unit, for assisting us in this investigation. Without their assistance, we would not be here today. I would also like to thank GED Match, the public genetic genealogy database that was used in this case, and the participants of GED Match who make these type of investigations possible. And some of you may have some questions as it relates to the genetic genealogy. And Paragon has provided us with some informational handouts so that you may make yourself more familiar with the process and the procedures that they use. So when we actually leave, there'll be some handouts on our table outside. We'll have a phone number where someone could answer any questions that you may have. It'll have the breakdown of how they do this process. It's 3 pages of information. Also, I would like to thank all of the gentlemen and ladies in the room as we go around to stretch this room. Over this period of time, all of these people has had a hand. They worked hard to see this day happen, not just for our families of the victims, but for our community and for our respective departments. This is a joyous time that we wanted to come together again and just show you that the unity, the one that was put into this case over the years, all of these guys represent that. To the family, we thank you all for your patience with law enforcement. We know it's been a tough road, it's been a long road, and we just really want to say thank you, and we hope you let others in your family know how much this also meant to each and every member of law enforcement that worked on your case. Before I go any further, I'm going to ask that the Attorney General come by, help, and just say a few words.
Chief, thank you. To the family, let me say this. You hear this referred to as a cold case. What I hope you recognize today is it was an open case, an ongoing investigation. And as Chief talked about, the many people that are in this room today that at some point in time pursued leads, gathered evidence, offered advice, I hope you understand that the 2 victims in this case were not forgotten. And today is a beginning. It's not ultimately justice for you, but what I hope it does is begin to provide some answers that you've thought about for almost 20 years now. The things that you don't know that occurred and want to know. And maybe today is a beginning of you getting some answers and ultimately you finding accountability and for you to be able to obtain justice. So I really want to take from the perspective of Attorney General that this is a reflection of what I already know about law enforcement in the state, is that cases are not forgotten, cases are not filed away, but instead we simply are looking for that next lead, for that next piece of information that we can use to be able to provide answers and accountability like we have provided for these families today. Chief Walker has been a remarkable advocate for these 2 victims, but more importantly, he has shown simply shoe leather work to make sure that we got here today. And Chief, I commend you for that. He didn't have to make that outreach to a forensic lab in California. He didn't have to go that extra mile. Mayor, you didn't have to provide him with the resources that this city incurred to be able to do that testing. And what today reflects is simply somebody who was passionate about providing justice for victims. And Chief, I commend you for that. But the other thing that I know is that this community is blessed with an outstanding prosecutor who's going to work diligently with his office to be able to make sure that this case goes forward. Kurt, thank you again for your work, and I want you to know we stand ready to support you in whatever way that you need. Today is a good day, but it's just simply a beginning of a process that will now take place in court. And in many ways, there's probably lots that you would want us to talk to you about today that we simply can't answer because that occurs in courtrooms. It's through witnesses, and it's in the testimony that's ultimately offered in a trial of this case. But what I do know is today is a good day. And today is a reflection of an awful lot of hard work with people who very much wanted to make sure that we could get to the point that we could provide justice for this family. And so that is the intention of everybody in this room. That will be our mission going forward. But it also is a reflection of how emerging technology can be used by law enforcement to help us solve questions that for years we don't know the answer to. And so I'm grateful for the fact that, again, this city has allowed for that technology to be used in this case, that we then will delve into the science to be able to explore what it can do for us further. I will tell you that just simply a couple months ago, I met with a company that did something similar along with officials at Forensic Science to say, how can we bring this to Alabama, and how is it that we can help communities? Because there is more than simply one open case in this state. There are obviously countless ones that we want to provide answers to for families. And what I hope today is not only to this family an acknowledgement that we stand behind them, but also to those many families in this state who still have unanswered questions, that we'll continue to work and do what we can to give them an opportunity for justice like we're doing here today. Chief, again, thank you for all your hard work, and for this agency, and for everybody that here is in this room today.
Thank you, General. So we'll try to let you answer one or two questions. There's a lot we can't tell you. I'll go ahead and tell you going in, and I know a lot of you may ask the question still, knowing that we can't release any information. But we just got just a few minutes, a couple of minutes that we will take questions. So let's start and we'll work our way around. Yes, sir.
Chief Brian Henry from Channel 12 out of Montgomery. Can you give us some sense of how it all went down with McCraney? Did you approach him at his house, business, and what was his reaction when you confronted him?
Are you talking about it at the arrest?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
No, we did not. We actually called him off-site. He was traveling, and we made a traffic stop and took him into custody on a traffic stop.
Where was that?
As between Delville, down at the bottom of where Parish Road is in Delville, it was right in that spot there.
And how did he react to all this?
Oh, it was without incident, and we had no issues, no problems.
Has he confessed?
That we cannot talk about at this time.
Can you give us some sense of why, unless I misread it, there are 5, not 2, but 5 capital murder charges against him?
If we'll hold that one just a second, I'll get DA to answer that one.
Chief Kim Chandler of the Associated Press, can you describe the source of the suspect DNA found at the crime scene? Was it hair? Was it body fluid? Was it touch DNA?
Got to hold that one. We'll try to get that down the road, but we got a lot of things we're still putting together with this case, so I don't want to divulge any of that just at this time.
Can you describe what this arrest means for this community?
You know, for this community, it's been a long time coming, and like I told you, with the victims' parents, it's everywhere I've been the last 48 hours, people just have a sigh of relief to know who was responsible for this crime. It's so hard to express. Just to look, they didn't have to say a word. Just to look at his face was just silent, and all of them would mention that I know that family has been through hell over the last 19 years, and they were so happy for the families.
Chief Walker, when you and the department heard the news that there was a match, what was your reaction after all these years?
I had to sit in my chair for 3 hours, and just we've all been working on this thing for so long, and it's one of the things where you say, is this really happening? Is this really happening? And so I had to take a little time to just sit and think and reflect, and then once we did that, we assembled a team and we went to work again.
When you were appointed chief back in 2015, did you have any doubts this would ever be solved? Because at that point, when you were appointed, we were talking 15 years or so since the bodies were discovered. Did you ever lose hope?
Anybody that knows me, even in this room, I've always said the same thing. It will be solved. And as far as back as last year, our goal was to get there before the 20th anniversary. So Golden State Killer again happens. We see that, and I'm like, you know what? Let's try that. Let's try that. And so that was, and I'm a spiritual guy, so it's all God's work.
Have you come up with a motive at this point?
We don't have a motive at this point. But we can't release some of the things that are leading us to that.
Chief, you said you sat in your chair 3 hours. What day was that on?
I knew you had to get down to the nuts and bolts. It was a couple of weeks ago. Yes.
So, if it was a couple of weeks ago, what took you so long to make that arrest?
Usually, you've got some surveillance, you've got some other intelligence that you need to get. So we wanted to make sure with some other parameters around this case that we wanted to tie up before.
So you're saying you have more than DNA that led to this charge?
No, ma'am. I'm just saying we worked at some other angles to try to get there.
Was anyone else involved, or can you say?
At this time, I can't say.
And also, when they left the convenience store, can you say if they went down Broad Street? Or
Can't get into that right now, no sir.
Can you tell us what you did back in 1999 to preserve evidence found at the crime scene? How you were able to preserve it this long?
Well, the evidence that was collected at our forensic lab, so it's been there.
How were you able to preserve it for this long? I mean, where has it been all this time? How were you able to have it in such good condition to be able to send it back to a lab now?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The lab, we were able to preserve it by putting it in our evidence room in a refrigerator freezer environment.
Chief, any way to describe how the two girls allegedly came in contact with McClaney? I mean, how did they meet?
Okay, I won't be able to discuss that at this time also.
Okay.
Chief Walker, right now we know the current charges that you have provided to the media. Are there any adjustments coming to those current charges?
Okay. If you will, Kurt, will you come by and answer the charge questions?
Chief Walker, one more thing. This man traveled for a living. He was a truck driver for many years. Have you had any communication about it? Is there any reason to believe he may have done this somewhere else?
We're actually going to look into that. We don't have anything that says that. We don't have anything that says that, but we're also going to check into that.
But you would agree that in cases like this where you have these type of crimes, in some of these cases, they do it more than once. I'm not saying that, but generally speaking.
I mean, in past people have, but you can also say that the other way, so.
Before I answer the question about the charges for y'all, I do want to say, as the district attorney here, I can't thank these guys behind me enough. Some of these guys, Keith and Dan, Scott, and Garrett, they were here originally when it happened, Chief Spivey, but multiple agencies, Wally, the Sheriff's Office, all these folks had worked tirelessly to bring this day together. And I can't thank General Marshall enough for his assistance with his office and his investigators. And when I say we have an Attorney General for this state that really cares about victims, we do. And when he says he'll offer whatever assistance we need, he will. And I appreciate you being here today. But to the family, I can't thank you enough for your patience. And I know it's been frustrating when they can't tell you things and you're just having to trust, and that's very difficult to do. And I cannot imagine what you've been through and what you're thinking today. But I can pledge you this, that my office will be the voice for JB and Tracy. And that's our job, and I pledge you that. This is just the first step, so patience will be needed. As to the charging decision, and I know it seemed a bit complicated, but under the capital murder statute, he's responsible for each death. And as to JB, he is going to be charged under 13A 540, subsection 3, which is murder by the defendant during a rape. Also, section 10, murder where two or more persons are murdered by the defendant. And subsection 17, murder committed by a deadly weapon while the victim is inside a vehicle. His charges as to Tracy are subsection 10, murder where two or more persons are killed, and subsection 17, murder when a deadly weapon is used to kill a person inside the vehicle. So that's why there's 5 charges, but theoretically it's 2 murders, just different counts to make it capital, if that makes any sense, but that's what it is.
Sir, could you elaborate whether there are any other known suspects, or is this it?
Well, I can't comment on that, and you know every prosecutor in the world would love to get up here and preach our case, but we can't do that, and we're ethically barred from it, and I will not comment on it. I will tell you, and I can tell you, he's in the Dale County Jail. He is under no bond, and a preliminary hearing will be set within the next couple of weeks.
How confident are you in the prosecution of this based on the evidence that you have today?
I can't comment on that. I would love to. I can't. So, I'm just proud to be here today looking at this family because I know they've been waiting on this a long time.
Mr. Turner, I hope I'm not repeating your question. I step out for a minute. Will you seek the death penalty in this case?
He is death penalty eligible. Absolutely.
Well, that will let you seek it.
Yes.
Have you made that decision yet?
Yes. About 10 years ago. Thank you.
Chief, was his name personally recognizable to you, Mr. McCraney, since he grew up here, and what was your reaction when that appeared to be the prime suspect?
It was. He grew up here. He went to school here, so did I. So I did know the name, knew him, and I was very surprised. I was surprised when I saw the results. You know, so, and every person I talked to said the same thing. You know, but the DNA doesn't lie.
I'm sorry.
Okay, this will be the last question. Go ahead.
I know you said he grew up here, that you knew him. Can you tell me where he was employed, what he was doing in 1999 when this happened?
In 99, I'm not sure. I just know right after there was a short stint with the military, but I'm not sure all of the channels he went through as far as his employment. That's one of the things that we are still working on. So in closing, I would like to thank all of the agencies that helped during this process, and I'd like to mention those if I could. Of course, we have the Ozark Police Department, the Dale County Sheriff's Office, the Dale County District Attorney's Office, Alabama Attorney General's Office, State Bureau of Investigation, ABI, Dothan Police Department, Houston County Sheriff's Office, and the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences. I would really like to thank them for all of their help through this time. And also, at this time, I would like to thank the families and the victims of the victim's family who were very patient with us. Questions are closed.
Chief, could we possibly talk with the former police chief, Tony Spivey?
Sure. Well, at a different time. It's closed at this time, I guess. All right, we thank you for coming out today, and appreciate you for being here.
All right, so the press conference concluding there in Ozark, and you see the crowd of law enforcement if you're looking at the screen right here. Folks we saw in attendance today, obviously Chief Marlos Walker, who addressed the media there at the podium. District Attorney Kirk Adams for Dale and Geneva counties. We also had Houston County Sheriff Donald Valenza in the room. Former Dothan Police Chief John White was in the room. Former Ozark Police Chief Tony Spivey in the room there as well. And so a lot of questions asked there. I want to kind of go through some notes that I took here. Chief Marlos Walker specifically thanking Parabon Labs. That's a story we put out yesterday. That's on our website. You can read a little bit more about how Parabon was able to play such a pivotal role in solving this case, or at least getting it to the point. I would say a case is not solved until you have a conviction, but at least getting us to the point where we're at today as well. So the Attorney General, Steve Marshall, coming to the podium and really addressing the families here, and that's what this is all about. And so Marshall saying, as we wrap up there in Ozark, this is an open case, not a cold case. He says it was not forgotten, and that the Chief Walker and the Ozark Police Department have done a remarkable job. The city, he commended them for providing resources because, let's face it, Ozark's a city of about, what, less than 20,000 people. We're not talking huge budgets there, but this probably was a very expensive process. Mayor Bob Bunning, who's the mayor now, was also the mayor in 1999 and obviously put forth the funding to get them to where they got today. Attorney General Steve Marshall commended Kirk Adams, who he calls an outstanding prosecutor, and Marshall says that today is a good day. As for Kirk Adams, who addressed the charges there, we're going to break some of those down tonight, but you heard him go through that list of those 5 capital murder charges, and that's been a huge question. There's a statute in the law, according to D.A. Adams, that says because the deaths happened in the vehicle, that they can charge for capital murder for that. Now, some may interpret that as potentially a car crash. Texting and driving could result in a murder charge, but somewhere in that law they have found that they are able to charge for capital murder because they were in the trunk of the vehicle, unfortunately, when they were shot and killed. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. We're going to kind of hang with you for just a few more minutes and get you to the half hour here. But Kirk Adams, in answering a question today, is he eligible for the death penalty? Kirk Adams responded, very eligible. So that's telling. The prosecutor is going to go for the death penalty there in this case, and more than likely, we would presume at this point. So just to kind of recap for you, what did they tell us today that we already didn't know? Really nothing, to be quite honest with you. But it was a chance for law enforcement to come together and show what they've accomplished to the masses. Now, what we've learned over the weekend, obviously, is the DNA test provided the results here that got us to this point, and Chief Walker addressing some of those parameters and the process of how they got to this point. But we really didn't learn anything new today. We did get to hear from law enforcement, which for a community that's been wanting answers for 20 years, it was refreshing for so many of you to hear it from the chief as opposed to someone like me. We've been talking about this all weekend, but we're not the official word of Ozark Police. Obviously, they are, and you heard from the state's Attorney General and the prosecutor in Dale County. So that's going to conclude our coverage here this morning live on WDHN TV 18 in Dothan, Alabama. We will have much more coverage coming up at 5 o'clock tonight, 6 o'clock tonight, and again at 10, and of course all day long on DothanFirst.com. If you really want to catch up on this case, you can do so. We broke the story Saturday morning around 11 o'clock, and you can get piece by piece as it developed through the weekend. That's on our website right now, DothanFirst.com. Also, if you don't have our news app, it is available to you online. You can download that. Every time there's been a development, we push that right to your phone in the form of a text message. So thanks for being with us this morning. This is a day, like we've said many times, that our community has waited for 20 years. You're watching Channel 18. We'll be back at 5.